in the dead of night, when sleep feels just out of reach and shadows stretch longer than they should, you're not alone. You're with Mr. DarXnights. Tonight's tale isn't just another bedtime story. It's a descent into something far more unsettling. So dim the lights, lie back, and listen closely. What you're about to hear was never meant to be found. Story 1. It was a kind of quiet that didn't feel right. The kind that hung too heavy in the air, like the town itself was holding its breath. Officer Daniel Jenkins had worked in Bell Hollow for nearly 15 years, and he'd never seen it like this. The streets were empty by 10. Even the bar had shut its lights early. Even the late-night radio chatter between units had thinned into static. It was just him tonight. Him, the dark cruiser, and a strange pressure building in the back of his head, like he'd forgotten something important. He looked at the camera mounted on his dash, then checked his body cam. Both were recording. He wasn't supposed to say what he was about to say, but something told him. No, something begged him to document it all, just in case. Because after the night, he wasn't sure anyone would believe what he'd seen, or that he'd still be around to explain it. He reached for the small notebook tucked beside the shift log and flipped to a blank page. His handwriting trembled slightly, even though his hands felt steady. He didn't write anything, just stare at the page, then close it again. Might as well say out loud. He mumbled and tapped the body cam. If you find this, I didn't go missing. I was taken. It all started 3 weeks ago. That's when the mirror came in. That's what they called in the report. Item number 212. Antique standing mirror recovered from homicide scene. But no one called it antique once they saw it. It didn't look old. It looked wrong. Too new, too clean. Even the blood splatter on the glass looked recent, like it hadn't dried, like it was still warm. Jenkins remembered standing in the evidence locker the first night it arrived, staring at it under the buzzing fluorescent lights. The room had turned cold, like someone had opened a freezer. He could see his breath in the air. No one else mentioned it. He blinked at the mirror once. It blinked back, but not in the way a reflection does. This was different, delayed, a second too slow, like whoever was on the other side was just slightly out of sync, as if mimicking him with the world's most unsettling lag. He'd laughed it off at first. The mind plays tricks, especially under stress. But when his partner, Officer Rickson, went in the next night to tag the item for transfer, he didn't come out, not fully. They found him slumped against the locker wall, eyes wide, body cold, unresponsive. No sign of drugs, no injuries. Just a whisper on the security feed, barely audible. Jenkins had played the tape back over and over, the volume cranked up. One word came through every time. Tomorrow. Rickson died 2 days later. Heart failure, the report said. But Jenkins saw something in that man's eyes before they closed for good. Not fear, resignation. Like he'd already seen what was coming. Since then, Jenkins had felt it following him. The mirror, or something inside it. He kept dreaming about it. Every night. The same hallway. The same open door at the end. The same warped mirror sitting inside a room that didn't exist in his house. He'd wake up drenched in sweat, sometimes screaming, always at 3:03 a.m. He tried to take a few nights off, but the dreams got worse. And then the footage started showing up. Not surveillance footage. Not anything from the department. These were videos of him. Walking routes he hadn't patrolled. Having conversations he didn't remember. Sometimes talking to people who weren't there. One clip showed him standing in front of his cruiser, staring into the dark woods behind Miller's farm. He didn't move for 20 minutes. Just stood. When he checked the logs, there was no record of him being there that night. No GPS ping. Nothing. And yet there he was. Clear as day. Time-stamped and tagged. It all circled back to the mirror. Jenkins had tried to get it removed. Even filed a request with the State Department for transfer to a secure evidence vault in Nashville. The paperwork vanished. Literally. One day it was on his desk. The next it was gone. No one remembered it. His sergeant swore he never submitted anything. Jenkins started recording every conversation after that. That's why he was here tonight, in his cruiser, alone, recording a confession of sorts, before it all went to hell. He didn't know exactly what would happen, but he knew something was coming. He'd seen it. In the mirror, it had happened 2 nights ago. He was back in the evidence locker, staring into the glass again. He swore he wouldn't look, but something pulled him in, like a hook in his mind, a voice whispering just behind his ear. Look, he did, and this time, it wasn't his reflection that stared back. It was him, yes, but not him. The figure in the mirror was older, paler. His uniform was stained, and his badge was cracked in half. Blood trickled from the corner of his mouth. Jenkins raised a hand. The reflection did not. Instead, it leaned forward and whispered something he couldn't hear, then held up a piece of paper against the glass. On it, a date, May 8th. Tomorrow. That was the same word Rickson muttered before he died. The next morning, Jenkins found a folded note in his patrol locker. It wasn't in his handwriting. It said, "Don't go home. 3:03 a.m. Watch the mirror. You'll understand." There was no signature. He checked the security footage from the locker room. Nothing. No one had been there. But him. He didn't go home that night. He parked the cruiser outside the precinct and kept the body cam running. At exactly 3:03 a.m., the dash cam picked up movement in the evidence room. The lights turned on by themselves. The mirror's surface rippled like water, and something stepped out. The video glitched. Static rolled over the frame. But Jenkins saw enough. A figure in a cop uniform. No badge, just hollow black eyes. It walked through the evidence room door like it wasn't even there and vanished into the hallway. Jenkins had watched that tape 100 times. He knew what was coming. Now it was midnight, May 8th. He leaned back in the driver's seat and looked at the mirror he'd stolen from the evidence locker. It was wrapped in a thick black cloth, hidden under a tarp in the trunk. He'd taken it out during his lunch break, told the front desk he was transporting it himself to state storage. No one questioned it, because by now, no one really saw Jenkins anymore. They smiled when he passed. They nodded, but their eyes glazed over, like they'd already forgotten he'd spoken, like he was already gone. He checked his watch. 12:03 a.m. 3 hours until the mirror opened again. He could feel it, like pressure behind his eyes. He looked into the body cam lens. If you're watching this, I need you to find the mirror. Smash it, burn it, lock it in concrete, and drop it in the ocean. I don't care. Just don't let it find another face. He paused. And if you see me, but I don't blink, run. The radio crackled suddenly. A voice on dispatch called his number. 3, Charlie. 4, we have a disturbance at Miller's farm. Lights in the field. Motion sensors triggered. He stared at the radio. That wasn't possible. He hadn't told anyone he was out here. The call had no dispatch origin. Just static in that voice. Responding, Jenkins muttered, knowing he shouldn't. But the cruiser started moving before he touched the wheel, as if something else had already decided. And in the back of his mind, the mirror began to hum. The cruiser rolled down the narrow back road leading to Miller's farm, headlights carving long shadows through the mist that hung low over the fields. Jenkins' hands remained on his lap, not even brushing the steering wheel. And yet, the vehicle moved with the precision of a seasoned patrolman, smooth, steady, as though some unseen force was driving it for him. He tried to tell himself it was nerves, that maybe he'd unconsciously placed his foot on the gas. Maybe his hands were reacting without his awareness. But that lie didn't last more than a breath. He wasn't in control. Not anymore. The radio hissed again, but this time there was no voice. Just a crackle that pulsed in sync with the growing headache behind his eyes. He glanced in the rear-view mirror, and for a moment, less than a second, he saw a movement in the back seat. A shoulder, the glint of a badge. his own face, watching him from shadows. When he turned around, the seat was empty. Jenkins flicked on the body cam with trembling fingers. En route to Miller's, he said quietly, almost himself, "Time is 12:41 a.m. Vehicle appears to be operating without direct input. Possible hallucination. Possible possession." The word tasted ridiculous coming out of his mouth, but it was the only one that felt accurate. He knew how it sounded. He didn't care anymore. The only thing that mattered now was making sure someone heard this. That someone, somewhere, knew the truth. As the cruiser crested the hill overlooking the farm, he spotted the lights immediately. Bright white strobes flashing from deep within the cornfields, rhythmic, unnatural. Not like security lights. Not like anything he'd seen before. They pulsed with purpose, like a beacon. The cruiser came to a stop by the gate. The engine cut itself off. Jenkins stepped out into the cold. Not farm cold. Something else. The air had weight to it, like walking into a sealed tomb. He reached for his flashlight, but it didn't turn on. The batteries had been replaced just that morning. In the distance, through the rows of towering stalks, something was moving, not walking, drifting. Jenkins couldn't make out the shape, but it shimmered faintly, like heat distortion in the summer. He knew better than to chase it, but his legs carried him forward anyway. The corn closed around him, tall and rustling without any wind. The deeper he went, the quieter the world became. Even the insects were silent. His body cam light clicked on by itself, casting a cone of illumination ahead. That's when he saw them. Mirrors. Dozens of them. Standing upright between the stalks, angled just enough to catch flashes of movement. All different shapes and styles. Some antique, some modern, some cracked, others pristine. And in each one, a different version of himself stared back. Some older, some dead, one missing its face entirely. He stumbled backward, heart thudding in his ears, breath coming in short gasps. The mirrors began to hum in unison. Not loud, just enough to feel in his teeth. A whisper rode the air, curling around his neck like smoke. "You've already come here. You always come here." He spun around. No one. Another whisper, this time directly beside his ear. "You brought it." Jenkins reached for his sidearm and froze. It wasn't there. His holster was empty. Panic surged through him. He looked down and saw that his badge was gone too. In its place, a fractured circle had been drawn over his chest with what looked like ash. Or soot. He rubbed at it, but it wouldn't come off. He turned to run, but the corn had shifted. The path was gone. Every direction looked the same. The mirrors had multiplied. Hundreds now, maybe thousands, forming an endless corridor of distorted reflections. He picked a direction and sprinted. Behind him, the whispers followed. Not words anymore. Laughter. Not amusement. Mockery. He burst into a clearing and nearly collapsed from the sudden weightlessness of open space. The mirrors were gone. The corn was gone. He stood in a wide, circular room with blackened wooden walls, floor scorched in a spiral that led to the center. There, standing upright like a monolith, was the mirror. The mirror, the one from the evidence locker. Unwrapped, waiting. Its surface was no longer reflective. It pulsed like water under moonlight. Jenkins took a cautious step forward, and the spiral under his boots lit up with a dull red glow. He tried to stop, to turn around, but his feet refused to obey. The room closed in with each step, not smaller, but tighter, like the air itself was narrowing around him. He stared into the mirror and saw a hallway, dim, flickering, unfamiliar. The camera on his chest clicked twice and began to record on its own. He reached out, touched the glass, and it let him through. Jenkins stumbled into the hallway. The air suddenly damp and metallic, like the inside of a ship. The walls were concrete, streaked with rust and mildew. A red emergency light flashed in the distance, casting the corridor in alternating waves of shadow and crimson. He turned back, expecting to see the mirror behind him. There was only a wall. No way back. Footsteps echoed ahead. Not rushed, patient, confident. He crept forward, hand brushing the concrete for balance. His shadow stretched long and twitching along the floor, but it moved wrong, delayed, just like the reflection had been weeks ago, as if it were reacting a few seconds late. He passed door after door, each marked with a number and a symbol he didn't recognize. Circles within circles, triangles split down the middle, jagged runes that hurt to look at. One door was cracked open. He paused. Inside, the air was colder. A desk, a chair, and a TV screen showing live footage from his cruiser. The camera angle panned, showing the driver's seat. Empty, then shifted suddenly, zooming in on the back seat. Officer Jenkins, sitting, smiling. The screen flickered. He looked up, and the figure from the screen was now standing at the end of the hall. His uniform was torn. His eyes were glassy. Blood caked his face like war paint. But it was him. No question. The copy tilted its head. "You've done this before," it whispered. "You keep doing it, over and over. And every time you think of the first." Jenkins backed away slowly. "What is this? What are you?" The copy took a step forward. "I'm the part you gave away. When you stared too long. When you listened too closely. When you believed. Another step. I'm the you that stayed behind. And now you take my place." Jenkins turned to run, but the hallway stretched impossibly long. His body felt sluggish, like moving through tar. The walls pulsed with heat. He could hear the others now, footsteps falling in rhythm behind him. Hundreds of them, all wearing his face, all with the same crack badge, all whispering the same word. Tomorrow, he found a stairwell and pushed through, descending into darkness without thought. Down and down and down. His body cam flickered, then cut out. All he could hear was a thunder of breath, his own heartbeat, and the constant, growing laughter that crawled up the walls behind him. He burst through a final door and collapsed into a large chamber lit by a single swinging bulb. At the center was a table, and on the table, his body, still, lifeless, dried blood under the nose. A fractured circle drawn over the chest. He reached forward, trembling. His fingers grazed the corpse's face, and the body opened its eyes. Jenkins screamed. The lights went out. In the blackness, something whispered directly into his mind. "You've taken your place. I'll take your voice." The camera came back on briefly, just enough to record his final scream, cut off by a static burst. When Jenkins opened his eyes, he was in his cruiser, Delight. The sun was rising over Bell Hollow. He sat perfectly still, both hands on the wheel. His body cam was recording. His face was blank. A call came over the radio. 3, Charlie 4, please respond. Officer Jenkins, you copy? He smiled and blinked once, but not quite at the same time as the camera. Not quite human anymore. The cruiser glided silently along the tree-lined road, just as the first rays of dawn broke through the branches. Officer Jenkins, at least, the thing wearing his skin, sat upright, gaze fixed forward, eyes unmoving except for the occasional blink that lagged behind his breath. The radio crackled to life again. 3, Charlie, for status update. Jenkins, are you okay out there? The thing in the driver's seat reached for the mic, slowly, with precision. Its hand hovered just above the radio controls, but didn't press anything. It let the call fade into static. Instead, it turned its head toward the body cam, slowly, like someone remembering how to move a face, how to act alive, and it smiled, wide, wrong, like a mask being pulled too tight. Then it blinked again. Out of rhythm, the footage recorded all of it. The cruiser came to a stop outside Bell Hollow Station House just before 6 a.m. The parking lot was empty except for Officer Griggs' old pickup truck and the rusted-out squad car that hadn't worked in 5 years. Jenkins, if you could still call him that, stepped out, boots hitting the pavement in eerie unison, like a marionette whose strings were being yanked by something unsure how humans truly moved. Inside, the building was quiet. Too quiet. The morning dispatcher, Elroy, sat behind the desk with coffee and half a bagel in hand when he looked up and spotted Jenkins entering the hallway. The coffee slipped from his fingers before he could even register why. Something about Jenkins was off. His shoulders seemed too square, his movements too stiff, and his face, it was familiar, but not alive. Jenkins? Elroy stood up slowly. The thing didn't answer, just kept walking, straight down the hallway, past the break room, past the stairs, past the armory, to the evidence room. The lock clicked open without a key. The lights inside flickered. Jenkins stepped in, and there it was. The mirror, wrapped back up, boxed, tagged, sitting on the bottom shelf like it never left. He reached down and touched the box gently, fingers brushing the evidence tape. It crackled beneath his touch like dead leaves. The lights blinked out for 3 full seconds. When they returned, the box was open, and the mirror was standing on the floor, waiting. The thing wearing Jenkins didn't speak, but its reflection did. "You were the last," it said. "Now there's no one left to warn them." The mirror rippled, and from it, something stepped forward. Another Jenkins, identical, but this one blinked normally. It looked confused, disoriented. Where am I?" The first Jenkins smiled. "Home. Again." In the hallway, Elroy called out nervously, "Jenkins? You okay in there?" The mirror flared suddenly, light pouring out of it, filling the evidence room with impossible heat. The second Jenkins tried to turn away, but the first grabbed him by the shoulders, forcing his face back toward the glass. "You remember now," it hissed. "You remember what you did." And he did. All of it. He remembered the hallway, the body, the others wearing his face. He remembered the spiraling stairs and the voice that lived behind the glass. The deal he had made, not to escape, but to warn. Only one could leave at a time. And this time it wasn't him. The mirror swallowed him whole with a single breath of wind. Then it went dark. Back in the cruiser, the body cam continued recording. Jenkins, still calm, still not blinking right, drove the empty streets of Bell Hollow while the sun climbed the sky. The radio played low static beneath a soft country song. Someone like, "You?" The cruiser stopped at a crosswalk where a young boy on a bike paused, waiting to pass. Jenkins looked at the boy, and the boy looked back. His smile faded. The boy blinked, tilted his head. Jenkins mimicked him, perfectly, too perfectly. The boy's brow furrowed. His grip on the handlebars tightened. And in that moment, some deep, instinctual part of him knew this wasn't a man. It was a mask. The light changed. The boy rode away, pedaling faster than before. Jenkins didn't move for 30 full seconds, just stared after him. Then the cruiser pulled away again, down the road, past the school, past the diner, toward the outskirts, toward the same back road from the tape, as if it had all been planned, as if the tape needed to loop. At the Bell Hollow station, Griggs arrived to start his shift. He found Elroy still standing behind the desk, pale and unmoving. "El? You good?" Elroy turned slowly, and Griggs immediately saw the look on his face, like someone had been slapped by God. "He came in this morning," Elroy whispered. "Jenkins." "Yeah? Good. He's all right." Elroy didn't answer, just reached down and hit play on the cam footage that Jenkins had handed in minutes before. The monitor crackled, and the video began. It showed the interior of a hallway no one recognized. Concrete walls, flickering red lights, strange symbols on every door. A figure stumbled into view, the camera clipped to his vest, showing his face. It was Jenkins, but his face was smeared with blood. His eyes were wild, and he was screaming something into the camera. "No one else. Don't touch it. Burn the mirror. Burn it." The screen glitched violently, then showed him being dragged backward into darkness. Another face leaned into the lens. Another Jenkins, smiling, then black. Grigg stepped back, stunned. What the hell? But Elroy was already pulling up the backup drive, searching for the rest of the footage. It's all here, he muttered. Every shift, every hour, for weeks. He's been leaving clues in every damn file. Grigg stared. Clues. Elroy nodded slowly. He's been looping through something. Some trap. He's trying to warn us. They pulled up an older file, one from 2 weeks ago. It was labeled like routine patrol footage, but within 20 seconds, they saw it. The mirror in the cornfield, unwrapped, standing tall, and Jenkins talking to it. You hear me? He was saying. I'll find a way out. I swear to God, I'll... The mirror shimmered. Then he vanished. Elroy hit pause. I'm calling the feds. Grigg shook his head. You think they'll believe this? I don't care, Elroy said. We got tapes. They can't ignore tapes. Grigg stepped out of the office, rubbing his face. The air outside felt heavy. Off! He walked to his cruiser and stopped dead in his tracks. There, on the windshield, was a single sheet of paper, typed just one sentence. It always starts again tomorrow. He backed away, heart hammering. Inside the station, the video footage kept playing. The bodycam showed Jenkins approaching the evidence mirror again. But this time, in the reflection, there were dozens of him. Rows, columns, all smiling, all waiting. Then the camera cut. That night, Jenkins was seen again, sitting in his cruiser outside Miller's farm. Same uniform, same blank stare. He turned on the camera, looked into the lens, and whispered, Day 1, then smiled. The tape ended, but another began, and another, all variations, all telling the same story, all ending the same way, with Officer Jenkins alone in the dark, staring into a mirror that shouldn't exist. And in every single one, he blinked just a second too late. Story 2. You're probably wondering why a man like me spends his golden years sitting in an old recliner, headphones on, mumbling stories into a dusty tape recorder. People think retirement means fishing trips or RV parks in Arizona. For me, it meant time. Time to reflect. Time to sort through everything I never understood when it was happening. Time to remember Firehouse 89. The city had long since shut the place down. Structural damage, they said. No funding to repair a cracked foundation. But they never talked about the real reason. About the calls that kept coming in even after the lines were disconnected. About the alarms that screamed through the empty garage at 2:33 every morning, long after the last crew moved out. They don't tell you this when you first sign up, green and eager, smelling of new rubber and starch. They don't tell you that sometimes a fire leaves something behind. Something hungry. Something that doesn't stop burning, even when the flames are gone. I started recording these stories because I knew no one would believe them. Not the chiefs, not the city, not even my own son, though he's wearing the badge now, following in my footsteps. God help him. But maybe if he hears this one day, he'll understand why I never wanted him near Station 89. It all started with the echo. We were between shifts. The rain had been falling heavy for hours, washing the soot off the windows and making the red engine look like it still had some shine left. I was sitting in the lounge with Wally and Torres, watching an old game rerun and trying to keep my eyelids from closing. The call light blinked once. Then again. Then the bell chimed. Only once. That was odd. Normally, dispatch came in loud and fast, rattling off streets and coordinates, followed by a burst of static and maybe a voice too tired to care. But this time, there was only the ring. One sharp, clean ring. Wally leaned forward. That ain't a call. That's a test, right? Torres shook his head. Nah. System check was yesterday. We stared at the panel. No message. No audio. Then a voice crackled through, just a whisper. "They're still in there?" I stood up, nearly knocking my chair over. "What was that?" Torres walked to the console and tapped the receiver. "Dispatch, this is 89. Come again." Nothing. Only the soft hiss of white noise. I took a breath. Rewind it. Let's hear it again. Torres cued the tape, hit play. Static, a long hiss, then, "They're still in there." A woman's voice. Low, calm, like she wasn't in any panic. "Didn't sound like a 911, Wally said. "No," I agreed. "That sounded like someone just talking, not calling for help." We pulled up the logs. No entry. The timestamp read 2:33 a.m., but the phone lines hadn't recorded any inbound traffic, like the voice had just appeared. Wally muttered something about prank calls, but his hands were shaking. I saw it. We all heard the same thing, but none of us said what we were thinking, that it felt off. Not like a prank, not like a glitch, like a whisper from a place that didn't use phones. I should have stopped there, logged it, shrugged it off. But curiosity's a slow poison, the kind that doesn't burn until it's too deep in your blood. That night I stayed late. Everyone else had cleared out by 4. I made coffee, sat in the dispatch room with the lights low, the rain tapping gently against the bay doors. At exactly 2:33, the light blinked again. I pressed record this time. No ring, no chime, just a voice. The smoke's too thick. I can't find the stairs. A different voice this time. Male, younger, terrified. I shot to my feet. "Dispatch! This is retired Officer Maddox at 89. Identify yourself." Silence. Then, just before the static kicked back in, I died on the 3rd floor. I backed away from the console like it had bitten me. My breath came in short bursts. I ran the tape back, played it again, word for word. I died on the 3rd floor. There was no mistaking it. No prankster on the other end of the line. No caller ID. No signal trace. Just a message trapped in the tape. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I checked fire records. Fires on 3rd floor citywide, last 10 years. Nothing matched. Then I checked a different file, one from a decade ago, my own station's incident reports. And there it was, March 19th, 2005, apartment blaze, smoke inhalation, fatality, Corey Duvall, age 22, found on the 3rd floor. I remember that call. The kid had hidden in the hallway, thinking it'd be safer than the unit. Never made it out. I was the one who found him. I was the one who zipped him up. And now, 10 years later, he called me from the other side. The next night I went back, alone again. I waited. 2:33. A new voice, coughing, choking, screaming, then cutting off sharply like a knife had been taken to the throat. Then silence. The tape hissed for 30 more seconds. Then a click. Then the voice said, "It's your turn now." I slammed the power off, ripped the tape out. My hands were shaking like hell. I left it there, didn't go back for days. Couldn't bear it. But something followed me. I'd hear the alarm bell in my dreams. The scream of an engine tearing down empty streets. My pager vibrating on the nightstand when I hadn't carried one in years. And always that time, 2:33. I told myself it was PTSD. Years of fires. Memories colliding in my head. But when my son brought me his academy forms and said he'd been assigned to the rebuilt Firehouse 89, my stomach turned to ice. They'd rebuilt it, right on the same foundation. Same number, same cursed soil. I tried to warn him, but he laughed. "Come on, Dad. Ghost stories? I thought you were the tough one." So I gave him the first tape. Didn't say anything, just handed it to him. A week later, he gave it back, pale, quiet. "I thought it was a prank," he said. I nodded. "It's not." He didn't ask for the other tapes, but I think he knew they existed. I kept recording anyway. Even if no one listened. Even if I wasn't sure who I was recording for anymore. Because deep down, I think I always knew the truth. These weren't just calls from the dead. They were calls for me. And something wanted me to answer. I stopped recording for a while. It wasn't fear, at least not the kind most people would understand. It was something deeper, like exhaustion of the soul. Like every time I pressed a button, I lost a little more of myself to that place, that station. But the silence didn't help, because even when I wasn't recording, the calls didn't stop. I'd wake up at 2:33 a.m. exactly, every night without fail. No alarm, no dream, just a jolt, like someone had whispered my name while standing over my bed. I'd sit up, breath held, heart pounding. Sometimes, the air in the room would feel thick, not just hot, thick, like it carried the weight of smoke that wasn't there. One night, I finally gave in. I didn't press record. I just listened, and that was the night the voice said my name. Maddox. It wasn't a question. It was a calling. Calm. Familiar. I spoke back. What do you want? No answer. But something scraped along the inside of the walls. Something that shouldn't move unless it had nails or claws. I didn't sleep again for the rest of the week. The next night, I got a voicemail on a landline that hadn't worked in years. Static. Then a child's voice, muffled and trembling. Tell him not to go upstairs. The floor is soft, it'll fall again. Click. My son had been on night shift at 89 that week. The next morning, I drove to the station. I didn't care that I wasn't on the roster anymore. I had keys. I had memories. And I had to know. It looked the same, mostly newer paint, newer signage, but the soul of the building felt untouched. It still breathed that uneasy breath of old bricks soaked in ash, like it remembered everything. I walked through slowly, checking each room, the locker bays, the kitchen, the gear room, then the stairs. They'd added a second floor in the rebuild, dorms and showers up top. I stood at the bottom step, and I remember the voicemail, "Don't go upstairs." But I had to. Every step felt wrong, like I was climbing into a memory that didn't belong to me. The air grew colder. The walls seemed narrower. And then, on the landing, I stopped, because there was a dark handprint on the white paint. Fresh, smudged, burnt. I turned back. That's when I saw the figure at the bottom of the stairs. Blackened, charred, not standing, leaning, like the bones inside weren't strong enough to hold it upright. The head tilted upward, though no eyes remained in the sockets. It pointed at me. Then, in a voice like boiling water, "He's not ready." I blinked, and it was gone. I got out of there fast. I didn't tell my son. Not yet. He'd just think I was cracking under retirement, seeing ghosts, hearing things. But that's just it. I wasn't seeing things. I was remembering them. 2 nights later, I heard the sirens in my sleep, but not the kind we use now. These were older, higher-pitched, the ones we had when I first started. I opened my eyes and smelled burning wood, but there was no fire, only darkness, and a red light blinking from my recorder. It had started on its own. I pressed play. I know where the fire started. I saw him light it. He was wearing the badge. My mouth went dry. The voice was female, muffled by cloth or smoke, but distinct. She kept talking. He set it all up, the alarms, the delay, the faulty hose. Said it had to look like an accident. Said they had to burn. The tape hissed. Then silence. Then a single tone beat, like an old pager going off. I stared at the recorder. Someone was talking about arson, planned arson, by a firefighter, from our house. And then I remembered the Keller Street fire. It had never sat right with me. 3 dead. Faulty equipment blamed. Hose didn't hold pressure. Fire spread too fast. But what if it hadn't been an accident? What if the voice was right? I dug through old archives. Had to pull favors to get the sealed report. Keller Street Fire, 1997. Victims, a mother and 2 children. Fire origin, back stairwell. Suspected cause, space heater. But I found a photo in the evidence stills. An accelerant canister. Not mentioned in the report. Not logged in the evidence. Hidden. Why? And then I remembered who was lead that night. Captain Roy Beckett. My captain. A man with 30 years on the job. A man who suddenly retired 6 weeks after that fire. I hadn't seen him since. I found him living upstate. Alone. Cabin in the woods cliché. But real. He opened the door, recognized me instantly. "Maddox," he said, voice hollow. "Took you long enough." I didn't ask why he said that. I didn't have to. We sat down. He made coffee. Then we didn't drink it. "You hear them too?" I asked. He nodded. Slowly. I stopped trying to ignore it years ago. "Why?" "Because they don't stop." He lit a cigarette with hands that shook too much for a man his age. "I thought we were helping," he said finally. "You know, the firehouse, the job, saving people. But somewhere along the way, he trailed off. Then he looked at me. I didn't set it," he said. "I saw who did. But I didn't stop him. And I didn't report it. Because he was one of us." I stared. "Who?" Beckett shook his head. "Don't make me say it. Roy. He's dead now. Died in another fire. When he started. And that's when it clicked. The calls. The voices. They weren't just ghosts. They were victims. Victims trying to expose the truth. And they were using us to do it. Because we were the only ones still listening." Beckett gave me an old tape. Said it was the first one he ever recorded. I took it home and played it in the garage. The voice on it was different. Low, rough, confused. I didn't mean to die here. I just wanted the fire to be bright enough that she'd see it from the road. But I slipped, and then I don't know where I am. Is this still the basement? Why can't I see my hands? Then static, then screaming. The kind that curls your blood, the kind that stays with you. I stopped the tape, burned it in the fire pit. Didn't sleep for 2 days. My son came by during the 3rd. Said they'd had some strange issues at the station. The pole had gone cold to the touch, icy, like metal in January. And someone had heard a child cry in the gear room. I asked him what time it was when it happened. He said, around 2:30, I think. I didn't say anything. I just handed him a box. Inside were the rest of my tapes. Every one of them. He took them without asking. Maybe he already knew. Maybe he'd heard the whispers too. I didn't see my son for a while after I gave him the tapes. I figured he needed time to decide what to do with them, whether to dig deeper or forget it all. A part of me hoped he'd burn them like I did the worst one, but deep down I knew he wouldn't. He's too much like me. Curious, stubborn, haunted. The silence didn't last long anyway. The dreams came back, stronger than before. Not just sounds now, visions. I'd walk through the old firehouse in my sleep. Only it wasn't how it looks now. It was how it used to be years ago, down to the old peeling maps and gear tags that hadn't been used in decades. Everything smelled like diesel and sweat and soot, and always the same ending. I'd stop at the dorm hallway. The fire alarm would start to ring, low, warped, and I'd see the figure standing at the far end, in bunker gear. Masked, he'd raise one hand and point at me. Then I'd wake up with soot on my fingertips. One night, the dream stopped, but not because they were done. They paused to let something else in. I was in my garage when it happened. I was tinkering with an old scanner unit, just to keep my hands busy. The house was quiet, too quiet. Then the scanner buzzed to life. On its own, a voice came through, crackly and distant. "This is Engine 89. We're trapped." There's no visibility. Can anyone hear us? The heat's rising and the hose is dry. Repeat, the hose is... I froze. That wasn't a live call. It was from a fire that happened 8 years ago. The Riley Street blaze. 3 firefighters died in that one. And I recognized the voice. It was mine. But I hadn't been there that night. I'd been off duty. At home. I'd never stepped foot on Riley Street. Yet there was my voice, recorded in static, calling for help from a place I'd never been. I shut the scanner off, ripped the power cord from the wall, threw it across the garage. The message kept playing. You left us here, Maddox. And then silence. I didn't sleep that night. I watched the door. I waited for something, to show up, but no one came. Until morning, when my son knocked. He looked pale, unshaven, eyes sunken. He held out a recorder without saying a word. I played the tape. The first thing I heard was heavy breathing, boots on wet concrete, the familiar groan of a firehouse locker door. Then whispers. He's not ready yet, but he keeps listening. He has to know the truth. And then my son's voice. He sounded off, distant. There's something behind the wall. I hear it every time I close up, like someone knocking, slow, like a heartbeat. I followed the sound and found a hatch I'd never seen before. It's sealed, bolted, but warm, too warm. He paused. Then he whispered, I think the fire's still burning. I stopped the tape. He looked at me. I went back last night. Where? The hatch. I opened it. I stared at him. And there's a room back there. A small one. Bare concrete. But the air inside, it was shimmering. Like heat waves. I could hear someone whispering from the walls. I wanted to tell him to stay away. I wanted to scream it. But I didn't. Because the truth was, I'd seen that room too. Years ago, after the Keller Street fire. I had followed the heat back then, found the hatch, opened it, and inside, I saw myself, sitting in the corner, burned, mouth open in a scream that never stopped. I never spoke of it, told myself it was stress, smoke inhalation, grief. But now my son had found it too. The fire never left. It was waiting. He handed me another tape. This one was old, labeled in shaky handwriting. Dispatch, October 13th, 91, 3:17 a.m. The moment I read the time, my stomach dropped. 3:17 a.m. The exact minute I had started having the dreams. The tape began with static, then a tone, then a child's voice. Help, we're still inside. Another voice followed. Calm, cold, adult. There's no help coming. Then screaming. Then fire. Crackling so loud I had to take the headphones off. And in the background, just barely, I heard my own name. Over and over. Maddox. 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 My son was trembling. I think it's trying to reach through us, he said. Not just talk, but enter. I didn't want to believe him, but I'd felt it too. The way the air would shift when a recorder played. The way shadows lingered longer than they should. We made a plan that night. One last visit to the station. One last walk through the bones of that place to figure out what it wanted, what it needed. We brought the tapes, and we brought fire extinguishers. The station was quiet. No calls, no engines, just dust and silence and a hum of old nightmares. We walked straight to the hatch behind the gear room. It was open. The room beyond glowed faint orange, like coals under ash. We stepped inside. No heat, no smoke, just recordings. Hundreds of them, lining the walls. Old tapes, digital cards, cassettes, labeled by date, fire location. Each one a message, a voice, a memory, a death. It was an archive of pain. And in the center, an old fire alarm bell, hanging from a chain. My son stepped forward. It's a warning system, he said. Or maybe a trap for the dead. The bell rang. On its own, Loud, sharp, final. The door slammed shut behind us. The temperature dropped, then rose, then dropped again. I could hear whispers in the walls, some begging, some accusing, and some laughing. My son fell to his knees. "They want me to stay," he whispered. "They want a voice, a vessel." I grabbed him. "We're getting out. Now." But the floor shifted, cracked. Smoke poured from the walls. I threw the fire extinguisher at the bell. It shattered. The tapes exploded into flames, silent flames. No heat, just light. Then the room disappeared. We were standing back in the gear room. The hatch was gone. Only soot on the floor. No fire. No whispering. No tapes. We didn't speak as we walked out. Didn't speak on the ride home. We haven't spoken much since. That night, I received one final call. From a number that doesn't exist. Just a whisper on the other end. "You broke the chain." And then the line went dead. The tapes haven't played since. No voices. No messages. The dreams have stopped. But every night, at 3:17 a.m., I still wake up. And I listen, just in case. Just in case they come back. Because the fire never ends. It just sleeps, waiting. This is the final entry of my delivery log. If anyone's even listening, my name is Charlie Denton. I've been a long-haul trucker for 23 years, and until last week, nothing on the road ever scared me. Not ice slicks in Colorado, not wildfires in Oregon, not even the miles of dead radio in the Utah salt flats. But what happened out there on Highway 47 in Arizona? What keeps happening? I can't explain it. I can't outrun it. And I'm not sure I ever left it behind. It started like any other Thursday. I was hauling a load of drywall from El Paso to Phoenix. Took a back route to avoid traffic. Real dry stretch of road. Barely anyone around. The sun was sharp, horizon dusty, and pink like it had been sandblasted clean. I was about 20 miles past a place called Benson when my CB went quiet. Not staticky, just quiet. Dead. Even the engine hum started sounding like it was too loud, too present. Like I was moving through something thick. That's when I noticed the first mile marker. A little green sign on the right side of the road. Mile 13. Didn't think much of it at first. Thought maybe I just hadn't been paying attention to the ones before. But 5 minutes later, there it was again. Mile 13. Same sign. Same faded green paint. Same bullet hole through the top left corner. That's when the hair stood up on my arms. I slowed the rig a little, scanned the surroundings. Just desert. A few scraggly bushes, one broken down fence line, about 50 yards off the road. But nothing moved. No animals. No cars. No wind. Just stillness. I rolled on for another 15 minutes. Let the music play, trying to drown out the growing knot in my chest. I even turned on my GPS just to mark my location. It said unknown road. Coordinates 0.0000, 0.0000. Then it froze, just like that. I tapped the screen, rebooted it. Nothing. I pulled over, got out, lit a cigarette. The sun was still baking, but I felt cold, real cold, like something was pressing down on my chest. That's when I saw the sign again, about 100 feet back. Mile 13. I hadn't passed it. I'd stopped before it. But somehow it was behind me. I threw the cigarette and jumped back into the cab. Told myself I must have gotten turned around somehow. Maybe I looped back without realizing. Maybe I dozed off. But my log showed continuous driving. No brakes. No loops. I kept driving. No exits. No cross streets. No towns. Just that long two-lane with a yellow divider, flanked by the same stretch of dry scrub and rocks. Then, maybe 20 minutes later, I saw a gas station. Old thing. Looked like something out of the 60s. Neon sign flickering, single pump, glass front smeared with dust. But it was a sign of life. I pulled in, left the engine running. A guy stood behind the counter inside. Late 50s maybe, hair slicked back, old uniform shirt with a name tag, Clint. He smiled when I walked in. Big, fake grin. Afternoon, driver, gas or snacks. I looked around. The place was too clean, like a movie set. The snacks on the shelves were all brands I didn't recognize. You got a map? I asked. He nodded, pointed to a rack by the door. I grabbed one. Arizona road map. Paper smelled like bleach. I unfolded it. No Highway 47. No sign of the route I'd taken. No Benson. No Phoenix. Just empty beige land with one small dot labeled, Welcome. That's it. No roads in. No roads out. I looked up. Clint was still smiling. Need directions? I didn't answer. I folded the map slowly and walked outside. And there was again, just past the parking lot. Mile 13. I hadn't left the highway. The gas station was the highway. I jumped back in the truck and took off, gravel spitting out behind me. No more stops. Just get out, drive west, floor if I had to. The sun never moved. It just hung there, low and orange and stale, like a dead bulb. I passed the sign again. Mile 13. This time I stopped. Got out, walked up to it, ran my hand over the bullet hole. Peeled paint. Rust. It was real, but it wasn't aging. I pulled the marker out of the ground, dug it out with a crowbar, threw it in the back of the rig. Then I drove another hour and found another. Mile 13. Still with the same bullet hole. Same rust. I stopped again. Got out. Checked the back of the truck. The first sign was gone. I should have turned around. But the thing is, I did. I made a U-turn on the highway. Took it slow. Turned all the way back the way I came. 20 minutes later, I saw the gas station. Same neon sign. Same flicker. Clint stood at the window, smiling. I didn't stop. I kept driving. Another 15 minutes. And I passed it again. No matter what direction I drove, forward, backward, circles, I always came back to it. Always. I tried radioing in. No response. Just a soft hum, like someone breathing into the mic. I shouted into the CB. Is anyone out there? This is truck 29 Delta. I'm stuck. Repeat. I'm stuck on a road that won't end. A voice crackled through. Not mine. Not anyone I knew. Just soft, breathy. You were always here, Charlie. I dropped the mic, pulled over again, sat there, tried to calm down. Then I noticed the clock on the dashboard. 13:13. I blinked. It didn't change. I watched it for an hour. 2 hours. Still 13:13. I shut off the truck. When I turned it back on, it was 13:13. That's when I realized this wasn't about distance anymore. It was time. It wasn't passing. Or rather, it was passing, but only inside that 1 minute. Like I was trapped in a loop between ticks of a second hand. That's when I remembered the logbook. I flipped to the last page. All my previous deliveries scratched out. Every page read the same thing now. Mile 13. Mile 13. Mile 13. Dozens of entries. Thousands. Like I'd been writing it forever. There was something on the page. I scratched at it. A photo. Me. Standing at the gas station. But I don't remember taking it. Behind me, the mile marker. Only this time it said mile 0. The back of the photo had words scribbled in red ink. Exit through the clerk. I don't know what that means. Not yet, but I think I have to go back. I think I have to ask Clint what the hell he is. Or what I am. Because if I don't, I'll just keep driving. Forever. I didn't sleep. I didn't even blink for a long time after I found that photo. It stayed on the dashboard, face up, that red ink burning into my mind like a curse. Exit through the clerk. Over and over, I whispered to myself like some lunatic chant. The next loop came fast. I could tell when it was about to happen now. A low vibration wheels, the sky flickering at the edge like an old film reel catching fire. I passed the sign again, mile 13. And then, of course, the station. Clint was there, standing outside this time, waving, like he knew I was ready. I pulled in. The gravel sounded like bones crunching under the tires. I shut off the engine, but the cab still hummed. My heart pounded louder than the diesel ever could. When I stepped out, the air was heavy. The kind of heat you feel at a funeral in the desert, when nobody wants to cry, but they sweat grief out of their skin. Clint didn't say a word when I walked up. He just smiled. "What is this place?" I asked. His grin didn't fade. "You know what it is?" I shook my head. "No, I don't. I'm stuck. I keep looping. That damn sign, mile 13. He nodded. "Yeah, that one's stubborn." I held up the photo. "What does this mean? Exit through the clerk? Is that you?" He chuckled. "Not just me." Then, without blinking, he turned and walked inside, like I was supposed to follow. So I did. The inside of the station hadn't changed. Same weird snack brands. Same hum of old refrigerators. But the temperature had dropped. It felt like walking into a walk-in freezer. My breath clouded in the air. Clint stood behind the counter now, staring. "You want answers, Charlie?" "Yeah." "You sure? 'Cause most don't." I nodded. He tilted his head. "Okay, then let's start with a question. What were you delivering?" "Drywall." He smiled. "No. Try again." "What?" He leaned forward. "What was in the trailer, Charlie?" "I told you." The register on the counter dinged. A receipt spit out. I didn't touch it. I just read what was printed. "Cargo, your remains. Destination, mile 0. Signature. Denied." I stepped back. "No." I whispered. "No, I'm not dead." Clint didn't answer. He just motioned behind me. I turned. The convenience store was gone. Just desert now. My truck sat there in the sand, covered in rust, windshield shattered, vines growing to the front grill like it had been abandoned for decades. I blinked. The store was back. Clint still behind the counter, tapping the edge like a metronome. "You got lost, Charlie," he said, "but not on any map. You were never heading to Phoenix." My throat tightened. "Then where was I going?" "Mile 0, he said. He stepped around the counter, handed me a key. Just one, rusted and bent. The tag attached to it read, "Clerk room. You'll know it when you see it," he said. "And when you go inside, just listen." "Listen to what?" He just smiled. I took the key and walked back to my truck. Drove. Same loop. Mile 13. Gas station. Desert. But this time there was a door, right past a marker. A freestanding door in the middle of the road. No walls, no hinges, just a wooden frame like a movie prop, standing upright in the dust. I stopped, took the key, got out. My hand trembled as I pushed it into the lock. It clicked. The door creaked open. Darkness inside. Not blackness, darkness, thick and layered. A smell like burnt rubber and copper poured out. I stepped through, and everything changed. No desert, no sun, no sky, just a long hallway. Fluorescent lights flickering overhead. Walls made of concrete that bled. I could hear phones ringing somewhere, dozens of them, and voices, muted like they were speaking through water. I walked. The hallway stretched on for miles. I passed rooms without numbers, all their doors ajar. Inside, I saw the truckers, sitting still, staring at walls. One man was writing mile 13 over and over on the floor in chalk. Another whispered coordinates into a radio with no battery. And one was me, staring back through a mirror, but the reflection didn't move when I did. It just sat there, watching. I kept walking. At the end of the hall was another gas station. Same as before. Same flickering sign. But inside, Clint wasn't behind the counter. I stood there, frozen in that uniform, name tag reading Charlie. Customers came and went. They all looked the same. Empty eyes, slow movements. Ghosts. One walked in. Same question. Got a map? I nodded. Handed it to him. It only said welcome. I blinked. The scene reset. Same person. Same question. On repeat. Forever. That's when I realized what Clint meant. This was the clerk room. I was next. I was becoming him. Trapped behind the counter. Waiting for the next lost soul to ask me the same question I once did. Where am I? And the answer? You were always here, Charlie. But I refused. I screamed, pounded the counter, tried to break the mirror. The glass shattered, but behind it was another door. Same wooden frame, same rusted keyhole. I used the key again. Another hallway, another station. But this time it was different. The air smelled clean. The lights buzzed in harmony. And there, on the floor, was a mile marker sign. But it had changed. Mile 0. No bullet hole. No rust. Just clean metal, glowing slightly. I touched it, felt warmth, heard voices again. But this time, they weren't underwater. They were clear. They were calling me. My name. Charlie. Charlie. I followed the sound. Walked toward a faint red light at the end of the hall. And then nothing. Just silence. Pure and heavy. Until I woke up. Behind the wheel. Truck idling. Same desert road. Same sky. I looked to my right. The sign read, mile 14. I choked. Laughed. Then cried. I was out. Somehow I was out. No station. No Clint. No endless loop. I hit the pedal. And didn't stop until I saw a real town. Street signs. Cars. People. I asked the mechanic what highway I was on. 47, he said. But you came from the wrong direction. What do you mean? He looked uneasy. That stretch of road's been closed for years. No one uses it anymore. After the fire. What fire? He handed me a newspaper from his desk. Last year's truck explosion. Driver presumed dead. It had my face. My name. Charlie Denton. Body never recovered. It read. I dropped the paper. Staggered outside. And there it was. On the hood of my truck. The mile marker. Mile 13. But the number was fading. Turning to dust. Just like Clint's smile. And the key? Still in my pocket. Still warm. The mile marker sign sat on my truck's hood like a grave marker. But it didn't stay long. Just as I stepped closer, the wind kicked up fast and unnatural and swept it away like it was made of ash. The number, 13, broke apart in midair, curling like cigarette paper in a fire. Gone. Just gone. I stood there in the dirt, staring at the spot where it had been, the feeling in my chest somewhere between relief and dread. I wasn't sure if I had escaped something, or if I had been let go. I should have driven away, found a phone, called someone, but I didn't. I just sat in the cab, engine off, hands on the wheel, watching the sun rise over the desert. My body ached like I'd been hauling cinder blocks all night, but I didn't care. For a little while, it felt like peace. Then the radio crackled, just a whisper at first, then louder. Charlie Denton. I flinched. It said my name again. I reached for the dial, but I hadn't turned it on. It wasn't even connected to a station. The voice returned, warped and distant, like it was calling from the bottom of a canyon. Charlie, come back. Static hissed through the speakers. You've got one more delivery. No, I said out loud. No, I'm done. I got out. The voice laughed. Not mocking, more like amused. Familiar, too. I turned the dial. Nothing. Just static. But the voice stayed. Look in her logbook. I hesitated. then reached for it. It was there, just like always, tucked in the sun visor, but the pages they'd changed. Where there had once been rows of dates and cargo lists and destinations, now there were only names. Dozens of names, none of them mine, all scratched out, except the last one. It read, "Final stop. Status, incomplete." I slammed the book shut. No. I turned the key in the ignition, but the truck didn't start. Nothing. Dead. Even though I had gas. Even though everything had been working moments ago. The sun dimmed, actually dimmed, like someone had turned down the brightness on the whole world. And then I saw them, mile markers, stretching down the road in both directions, all of them reading 13. Even behind me, like the highway had looped around again without moving an inch. I stepped out of the cab and looked around. No Clint, no gas station, but something was there in the distance. A structure. Square, white, flickering in and out like bad reception. I walked toward it, gravel crunching, every step heavier than the last. It was a phone booth, just standing there in the desert, glass cracked, cord dangling, but the light inside was on. It rang once, twice, then a third time. I picked it up. "Hello, you forgot something," the voice said. It was me. Or at least it sounded like me, but it was off, like a recording that had been played too many times, degraded and warped by time. "What?" "Your shift. I'm not doing this again." "But you never finished, Charlie." The desert shimmered, heat waves folding the world like origami, and suddenly I was standing in a different place. Not the phone booth, not the desert. An office, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. Walls gray and featureless, a chair in the center, and a man sitting in it. I walked closer. It was me, older, tired, wearing the clerk uniform. The name tag now read Denton instead of Charlie. He looked up. "Been a long haul, huh?" I nodded. "Why me?" He smiled faintly. "Because you were always driving in circles. You just didn't know it." Then he stood and stepped aside. And I sat down, because I had to, because some part of me knew this was where it always ended. The lights dimmed. A phone rang. I picked it up. "Welcome to mile marker 13. I said, "How can I help you?" The caller sobbed. "I'm lost," he said. "I know," I replied. "I was too." The scene rewound. Reset. Again. And again. I could feel myself slipping, forgetting who I was. The repetition smoothed over my thoughts like river stones. The names in the logbook vanished. My voice became automatic, until something broke the cycle. A boy, young, wide-eyed, wearing a firefighter's badge on his sleeve. He stepped to the door of the booth, one I hadn't seen open in years. He looked straight at me and said, "Are you my dad?" It shattered me, because I knew him. I remembered his face from an old photo on my dashboard, from before the route, before the loop, before I became the clerk. "Eli?" I asked. He nodded. "You're not supposed to be here." "I followed your logs," he said. "The ones you left." "How? How did you find them?" "You mailed them," he said, "to our house, postmarked from towns that don't exist." I blinked. I didn't remember doing that. Maybe some part of me had tried to leave a trail, to warn him, to keep him away. "I want to go home," Eli whispered. Tears welled in my eyes. "You can," I said, "but I can't come with you." He held out something in his hand. The key, the same one Clint gave me, but it looked newer now, untouched by rust. He pressed it into my palm. "You forgot this." The walls flickered. Reality bent. And suddenly we were standing at a fork in the road. Two signs, one pointing to mile 0, the other, home. "I think this is your last run, Dad." I nodded, hugged him tight. "Don't look back," I said. He nodded, walked the path marked home, and I took the other. I turned the key in the air, and the road opened. Just once. Just for me. I drove. Not a truck now. Just me, walking forward. Footsteps echoing into nothing. Then light. Warm, golden light. Not from a sun, but from inside. From peace. From truth. And I finally understood the road wasn't a trap. It was a waiting room. A place for those who never knew they died. A space to reconcile the weight of regret, the ache of what's unfinished. Clint? He was just the usher, the first to accept, the last to forget. I stepped through. No more signs. No more loops. Just silence. And then I woke up in a hospital bed. Machines beeping. White walls. Voices. A nurse shouted for the doctor. I looked around, confused, my mouth dry, body aching. "Where? You've been in a coma," the doctor said. "For 7 months. Truck accident. You were hauling drywall near Arizona." I blinked slowly. "Mile marker 13? The doctor frowned. "Yeah. How'd you know?" I didn't answer. I couldn't, because something inside me had changed. The key was gone, but the memory remained. I looked out the window. A sign stood across the street. Just a regular road sign. But for a second, only a second, I saw it flicker. Mile 0. And behind it, a man in a gas station uniform. Smiling, nodding, then vanishing. Like he was finally off shift. And someone else had clocked in. Maybe it was never about escape. Maybe it was about understanding your route. Why you were driving in circles. Why you could move on. Now I could. I closed my eyes. And for the first time since that endless road, I slept. Story 4. Before the town disappeared, Sheriff Abel Rourke could feel it fading from the edges of his memory, like a dream unraveling thread by thread. It started small. First, he couldn't recall the name of the corner diner, where he drank his morning coffee for over 2 decades. Then the name of the old deputy who rode shotgun with him during the '89 floods. Then it was the name of the town itself. It came to him in flashes. Letters floating in darkness. A sign in the desert. White paint. Faded wood. Welcome to Harrow's End. That was it. That had been his home. But when he typed it into a GPS, nothing came up. No roads. No routes. Just blank desert and broken lines. The locals in the county overlooked at him sideways when he asked about it. Even the ones he knew had visited. Never heard of it. They'd say, "You sure it wasn't a dream?" A dream. That word haunted him. Because some nights, he'd wake up shouting codes from old police dispatch. Or see the silhouette of his cruiser outside the window. Engine cold. Lights flickering like fireflies. His wife, God rest her, used to tell him it was stress. That retirement would fix it. But she died before he put the badge down. Now, 10 years since his last shift, Abel Rourke stood on the shoulder of Route 67, staring into a patch of desert where Harrow's End used to be. No sign, no buildings, no dirt roads, just cactus, scrub, and wind. But in his hands, he held a manila folder, case files, real names, dates, fingerprints, photos of crime scenes so brutal they still made his stomach turn. And on the top of it all, his badge, blood-stained, bent, serial number still etched on the back, R 2317, Harrow's End PD. He gripped it so tightly his knuckles turned white. This was real. He knew it was, and he would prove it. He turned back to his old Ford pickup and climbed in. The AC sputtered as the engine rattled to life. He pulled onto a dirt path. There had been a path once, and drove slowly into the heat shimmer. The deeper he went, the more certain he became. The curve in the hill, the shadow of where the water tower once stood, even the faint outline of the sheriff's station, his station, etched in muscle memory. He'd parked where the lot used to be, got out, and stepped into a town that didn't exist, or wasn't supposed to. The first thing he noticed was the sound. Or rather, the lack of it. No birds, no bugs, just wind, but not desert wind. This wind carried whispers, soft, clipped, like distant radio static in the shape of words. He walked forward, and as he did, he saw it, just a flicker, a door frame, hanging in midair, then gone. He reached into his coat and pulled out the recorder, a relic from his old patrol days. Cassette-based, sturdy. He clicked it on. "This is Sheriff Abel Rourke," he said. "Badge R2317. Date is... hell, I think it's the 3rd. October. I am currently standing in the former location of Harrow's-End, New Mexico. The town has been..." He paused. "No good words for it. Erased, best I can tell. No map, no signs. But I remember everything." He lowered the recorder, and then he saw it. Not a full building, but a wall, a corner of brick, appearing just for a second, like something was trying to build itself around him. He walked faster. Each step brought more fragments. The post office steps, the bell from the schoolhouse, the newspaper stand with the rusted chain. He wasn't losing his mind. He was finding it, piece by piece, until he reached a lot where Main Street had once split, and standing there was a man, not a stranger, Deputy Travis Burke. Younger than Abel remembered him, clean-shaven, no gray, no limp from the leg injury in '97. He waved. "Morning, Sheriff." Abel's mouth dried up. "Travis." The man smiled, but it wasn't a full smile. It didn't reach the eyes. "You're early," he said. I buried you." The man cocked his head. "I know, but not yet." The wind picked up, and the buildings returned. Not all at once, but fast. The diner, the town hall, the sheriff's station. People, too, only they weren't people. They moved like mannequins, heads tilted too far, steps too stiff, wearing the faces of those he once knew. And still he stepped forward, because he needed answers, and this was his town, even if it wasn't real. The inside of the station looked the same. Desk, holding cells. The old map on the wall with pins marking old cases. He reached out, touched the desk. It was solid, and sitting on top of it, a file, one he hadn't brought. He opened it. Inside, photos of him, sleeping, driving, sitting at the kitchen table, recent photos, and a paper-clip document labeled Subject 046, A. Rourke, Abel. Memory integrity, stable. Resistance score, 91%. His hand shook. On the next page, reintegration recommended. Proceed to phase 2. "What is this?" he whispered. "History," said the voice behind him. He turned. Not Travis this time, but a man in a black suit, gray tie, expression like carved marble. "You're not real," Abel said. "No," the man replied. "You aren't." He blinked, and the office vanished. Now he stood in a white room, cold, sterile, hooked to wires, a chair beneath him, monitors blinking softly. The man in the suit stepped forward, holding the badge. "This was never yours." "I earned that," Abel growled. "You were part of the trial, an experiment in emotional containment and mass amnesia. Harrow's End was a test site. We needed to know how well memories could be buried." "Why?" "To protect people." "From what?" "From truth," the man said. He gestured, and a panel slid open in the wall, revealing rows of capsules, each with a person inside. Sleeping, dreaming, like you, the man added. "Most don't resist. You did. That's why you kept seeing the town." "You're lying." The man just sighed. You held on longer than anyone, but it's time. He reached out, but Abel pulled back. No, he said. I remember. That matters. The world flickered again. He was back in the station, alone, the badge in his hand. But now the floor beneath him rippled like water. He dropped to his knees. He could feel it happening. Not death, erasure. Please, he said softly to no one. Don't take it from me. It was my life, my town, my people. The lights blinked overhead, and a voice, female this time, echoed softly. Subject memory threshold reached. Identity dissolution at 12%. He pressed the recorder to his lips one last time. If anyone hears this, he whispered, my name is Abel Rourke. I was the sheriff of Harrow's End. It was real. It mattered. We mattered. Then the world turned black, and silence returned. He wasn't dead. That was the first thing Abel realized when he opened his eyes. He wasn't in heaven or hell or whatever came next. He was lying on the floor of the old sheriff's station again, cheek pressed against cold tile, as if time had hit rewind and played back to the moment just before the world unraveled. Only now, it wasn't empty. He could hear typewriters clacking, phones ringing, footsteps, voices, familiar ones, laughter, heated arguments about parking tickets. It was like Harrow's End was alive again, humming with the daily chaos of small-town law enforcement. Abel pushed himself up. The walls were freshly painted. His desk lamp was on. A stack of files sat exactly where he used to leave them, right beside his coffee mug with the chip on the handle. Everything was perfect. Too perfect. He looked down at his hands. No tremor. No aging spots. They were the hands of a younger man. He rushed to the restroom, flicked on the light, and stared into the mirror. 40 years old. Full head of hair. No beard. A uniform that still fit perfectly. His badge, clean, unmarred, rested on his chest. It wasn't just memory now. He was inside Harrow's End, living it, again. He stumbled out of the restroom and into the lobby just in time to see Deputy Travis Burke walk past, file in hand. Sheriff, he said casually. Abel blinked. You remember me? Shouldn't I? Travis chuckled. Rough night? Abel tried to speak, but his throat tightened. Yeah, something like that. He stood still for a long while, breathing in the scent of old wood and ink. He watched the deputy spill coffee and curse. Heard the dispatcher complain about the radio static. Every detail perfect. Too perfect. But something deep inside screamed this wasn't real. It was a cage built from memory. From his memories. And the more he played along, the more he risked forgetting that this wasn't supposed to exist anymore. Still, part of him wanted to stay. A second chance. No more hospitals. No more aching bones. Just a job. The town. The peace. But peace, he knew, was always temporary. The first crack came later that afternoon. He was reviewing a petty theft report when a knock came at his office door. Yeah. A deputy stepped in, handed him a thin manila folder. Found this in the evidence locker. No idea where it came from. Abel opened it slowly. Inside, photos. Not of town crimes, but of him again, older, standing outside a rundown house, sitting in a hospital room, driving his pickup along Route 67. These were from the outside, not this Harrow's End. The other one, the real one. His hand began to shake. He flipped through the pages and found another document at the back. Memory anchor hashtag 046. A. Schedule reality intervention pending. Then, a scribbled note. We're losing him. Reinforce boundaries. Increase memory distortion dosage. A cold sweat rolled down his spine. They knew he was regaining awareness, and they were trying to stop it. That night, Abel sat on the hood of his cruiser, parked beneath the stars just outside town. He tried to remember everything, names, cases, addresses. Every little detail that proved Harrow's end had been real. He repeated them like a prayer, but they were slipping. Some names came blank. Some faces fuzzed out in his mind. He clutched the badge tightly. If he forgot again, would he lose himself completely? A voice cut through the quiet. "Evening, Sheriff." He turned. It was her, Janie Clements, the town librarian, dead 20 years. She looked as she had in her 30s, red scarf, glasses, notebook always in hand. "Evening, Janie," he said quietly. "Trouble sleeping? Just thinking. About the files?" He hesitated. "You saw them? Everyone does eventually. The ones like you. The ones who remember." He stared. "Who are you?" She smiled sadly. "Same as you. A mind they couldn't erase. What is this place really?" Janie sat beside him. "They call it the loop. A containment cycle built from your own memories. They let you live them on repeat. Comfort, familiarity. But every time you resist, they adjust it, twist it, wipe the parts that give you strength. Why me? You were a leader. You noticed things. That made you dangerous. You remember the town when everyone else forgot." He swallowed hard. "And you? I broke through once. Saw the truth. Left messages. Clues. That's why I'm still here, my punishment. They let me remember, but only inside this box. Can we escape?" Janie didn't answer right away. Then, not through the front door. She pulled something from her coat, a cassette tape. She placed it in his hand. "What is it?" "Your final transmission. The one you made when you stood at the edge of the town, right before they pulled you back in. It's the anchor. Listen to it. Really listen." Abel took the tape and stared at it like it was a lifeline. Then Janie stood and walked away, vanishing into mist that had begun to roll down Main Street. The next morning, the town was quieter, almost hollow. Deputies walked in jerky patterns. The radio only played static. Time felt off, too fast in some places, frozen in others, and the sky was the wrong color. Abel locked himself in his office and slipped the cassette into his old player, pressed play, and heard his own voice. "If anyone hears this, my name is Abel Rourke. I was the sheriff of Harrow's End. It was real. It mattered. We mattered." Then silence. Then a faint second voice, one he hadn't remembered recording. Not Janie's, not Travis's, but his own, whispered and distant. "They're watching, listening. Don't trust the mirror. Don't trust the man in the suit. Don't eat the pie. The basement is the door. The basement is the exit." His heart pounded. He stopped the tape. Basement. The sheriff's station basement. Of course. It had been condemned after the fire in '94. No one went down there. Not even him. Until now. He rose from his chair and moved quickly through the building. None of the deputies looked at him. None even blinked. He reached the metal door beneath the back stairwell and yanked it open. Dark. Dusty. The scent of burning wire. He flipped the light, but nothing happened. So he took out his flashlight and descended into the black. Each step felt longer than the last, like the stairs were stretching. Then he reached the bottom. Concrete floor, exposed brick, and in the center, something that didn't belong. A door, tall, smooth, silver. No handle, no hinges, just standing there like it had grown out of the ground. He reached toward it, and a shock went through his body. A sound followed, like metal scraping bone. Then, Travis's voice. "Sheriff, what are you doing down there?" Abel turned, startled. Travis stood halfway down the stairs, expression blank, eyes all wrong. "Come back upstairs," he said. "Let's not do this." Abel held his ground. "What is that door?" "Just a dream. Doesn't mean anything." "Then you won't mind if I open it." Travis sighed and took another step. "Please, you've done so well this time. Just let it go. You've earned your peace." But Abel saw it now. The slight flicker in Travis's outline. The distortion in the way his mouth moved. He wasn't real. None of this was. And he was done pretending. He stepped toward the door. It responded, not with a creak, but a hum. A low, pulsing sound like breath held too long. He pressed his palm against it. It rippled. Travis lunged forward. Don't! Too late. Abel pushed, and the world collapsed. Not in an explosion, not in fire, but like glass shattering inward. Sound vanished. Light inverted. And Abel Rourke fell through fabric of memory into a place that had no time, no town, no gravity. Only questions, and pain, and the truth waiting on the other side. He opened his eyes to silence. Not the heavy silence of quiet room, but the deafening, hollow kind that fills the void between worlds. The air was dense, no wind, no warmth, just thick gray nothing. Abel Rourke stood on a stretch of cracked pavement beneath a colorless sky. Above him, the clouds hung like frozen ash. Below, the road ended in every direction, a circle with no signs, no markers. Just endless loops of fading blacktop and white lines drawn by a machine that never meant to stop. He looked behind him. The silver door was gone. There was no town, no Harrow's End, no sheriff's office, no Janie, no Travis, only the fragments of memory, floating in the haze like echoes waiting to be recalled. He touched his chest. His badge was gone, too. A nameless man in a memoryless place. Where am I? He whispered. The words disappeared before they reached his ears. Then movement. Ahead. A man in a gray suit stood just off the edge of the road. Not walking, not waiting, just there, like he had always been. His face was wrong. Perfectly symmetrical. Too still. Too clean. His eyes shimmered like mirrors. Abel stepped forward cautiously. Who are you? The man didn't answer. Instead, he gestured to something in his hand. A file folder. Abel took another step. The folder dropped from the man's hand and landed at Abel's feet with sound far too heavy for paper. He picked it up, opened it. Inside, pages filled with dense text, blacked out paragraphs, photos of himself. Years of surveillance. Case logs. DNA reports. Voice samples. CT scans of his brain. Records of experiments labeled. Memory retention patterns in subject Rourke, Abel. Control group, Harrow's End. A final page had a stamped header. Erase your status. Failed. Subject retains resistance. Initiate final protocol. Abel's throat tightened. He looked up, but the man in the suit was gone. Only the wind remained now, whispering in a voice that wasn't wind at all. Time to forget. The sky above twisted into a spiral, the gray turning to black as the ground beneath his feet began to dissolve like dust in water. Abel tried to hold on to something, anything, but there was nothing left to grab. Only thoughts, memories, voices. He was slipping. His name, his wife's face. The way the sun looked on Main Street at 6 a.m. Gone, gone, gone. And then darkness, but not the end. He woke up screaming. He was in a hospital room, bright lights overhead, machines beeping steadily, his arms restrained, tubes in his neck, heart pounding like a jackhammer. A nurse rushed in, then two men in lab coats. They spoke to each other in hushed, urgent tones. He's back. Lock it down. Full suppression. Try level 3 sedative. We can't risk another breach. Should we notify the director? No, not yet. Let's see if he remembers. One of them leaned close. Abel, can you hear me? He didn't answer. They didn't know yet that he did remember. All of it. Every crack in the illusion. Every false sunrise in the town that never was. He closed his eyes again and slowed his breath. Let them think they had him. let them believe he was erased. They removed the restraints 2 days later, brought him to a recovery ward that looked suspiciously like an old motel, remodeled with smiling nurses and muted walls. He played the part, answered their questions with shrugs. Do you remember your role in Harrow's End? What's Harrow's End? Good. Very good. Every day. He walked the courtyard, smiled at the orderlies, nodded at the cameras, and counted the steps from his bed to the fence. 48. He waited until a thunderstorm. They always came like clockwork. 3:30 a.m., twice a month. That night, as the winds howled and the lights flickered, he slipped into the maintenance hallway using a stolen key card. He moved fast, careful, like he was back on patrol. He reached the outer gate, slipped through the breach in the wiring he'd found 3 nights earlier. Then he ran. No plan, no map, just instinct, and a single word echoing in his mind. Basement, but not the one under the sheriff's station. Another one, bigger, older, hidden beneath the hospital itself. He reached the backside of the complex, its oldest wing, long condemned and overgrown with ivy. It looked like a relic from another century. Windows boarded, doors chained, but one window was loose. He pried it open and slid inside. Inside was dust, rot, decay, and silence. He moved like a ghost, the old hallway groaning beneath his weight. Every step was memory and muscle. He found the old elevator shaft and climbed down the maintenance ladder, floor by floor. Then, at the bottom, another door, plain metal, no handle, just like the one in the dream. Only this time, there was something new carved into it. Protocol 7, authorized only. He pressed his palm against it. It shuddered open. And beyond it, truth. He entered a chamber unlike anything he'd ever seen. Rows of servers, monitors, walls lined with storage tubes, filled with floating, silent human bodies. Dozens, hundreds, some familiar, some strangers, all asleep, all wired into machines. And at the center, the town, a holographic projection of Harrow's End, glowing above a black console. Perfect, intact. It was still running. He approached the terminal. Lines of code scrolled past, controlling memories, people, conversations, even weather. He saw names, faces, his deputies, Janie, even himself, simulated day after day in endless cycles. Why? He whispered. Because they were studying them. Because someone wanted to know how long a man could resist a false world before surrendering. He looked down and saw one more file. Subject 001, Janie Clements. She was still in there, trapped, looping, remembering, forgetting, over and over. He had to get her out. He had to end it. Abel typed in a command. Override simulation, Y/N. He hovered over Y, then paused. Once you do this, a voice behind him said, there's no going back. He turned. The man in the gray suit. Still perfect. Still wrong. Abel stared at him. You can't keep people in fake memories forever. They're peaceful. Isn't that what everyone wants? It's not real. The man smiled. Neither is grief. Neither is guilt. What matters is comfort. And they are comfortable. Abel looked back at the screen, saw the faces again. Some happy, some crying, all unaware. And he made his choice. Why? The system resisted. It screamed. Alarms blared. Tubes shattered. Machines sparked. And one by one, the bodies began to wake, including Janie. Her eyes flew open in the chamber behind him, wide and terrified. She looked at Abel, and for the first time in years, she knew. She remembered. He rushed her pod, opened the seal, caught her as she fell forward. Are we out? She whispered. Almost. The man in the suit frowned. You think this ends the program? I think it ends your version of it. Abel reached for the emergency shutoff. The man lunged. Too late. The lights blew out, and the world inside the simulation collapsed He woke up on a grassy hill, sunlight warming his face, bird song, fresh air, Janie beside him. The hill overlooked a small valley, and nestled within it, Harrow's End, but not a simulation, not wires, not code, a town, real, alive, rebuilt. He blinked against the light, unsure. Is this still part of it? He asked. Janie smiled. I don't think so. She handed him a badge. Worn, blood-stained. His. Looks like you finally came back. He held it in both hands and laughed quietly. The wind whispered through the trees. And somewhere, far behind them, a door closed forever. Story 5. Welcome back to another chilling night with Mr. DarXnights, where true crime and supernatural terror meet under the cover of darkness. Tonight's story is not for the faint of heart. As the shadows stretch long and the silence grows loud, let's take you behind the bars of a prison where justice once screamed and still whispers from Cell 7. Turn down the lights, lay back, and let the nightmare begin. It started with a whisper, just a breath of sound, barely louder than the flicker of fluorescent bulbs above the aging prison corridor. Correctional Officer Henry Lawson was on the third round of his night shift at Bradmore Penitentiary, a facility older than the state lines themselves. When he heard it, he paused outside the sealed solitary confinement wing, long abandoned after modernization of the prison system years ago. The rusted gate creaked behind him as if reacting to his hesitation. Cell 7 was halfway down that forgotten corridor. It had been bricked off from both ends decades ago after a particularly grim chapter in the prison's history, the executions. It was where death row inmates were kept in isolation during their final weeks. That part of the prison was officially condemned, but Henry swore he'd heard it again. A whisper, just one word. Lewis. He froze, heart stuttering in his chest. His flashlight beam trembled as he aimed it down the brick corridor. Hello, he called out, his voice flat and echoing. Nothing responded. No scuffle of movement. No chuckle from an inmate playing games. But something deep in Henry's bones told him he hadn't imagined it. It was his third week on night duty, and the second time he'd heard the voice. He'd told his supervisor, Warden Mendez, about the previous incident, but the older man laughed it off, chalking it up to the building's decay or lack of sleep. Henry hadn't pressed the issue then. He had mentioned that the last time he heard the whisper, the name was Rodriguez, and that inmate Rodriguez had hung himself in his cell later that morning. Now, Henry's stomach turned cold. The next day, he pulled the prison roster. Lewis, inmate number 2749. Selby, 16. Serving time for armed robbery, multiple counts. Not a model prisoner by any means, but not suicidal either. Henry made sure to keep an eye on him. For hours. He even visited his cell under the guise of checking for contraband. Lewis was eating a sandwich and watching a flickering TV bolted to the wall, blissfully unaware of any doom hanging over him. By the end of the shift, Henry told himself he was being paranoid. The name meant nothing, just a coincidence. Until he returned the next night. They found Lewis in the laundry room, suspended by a homemade noose tied to a steam pipe. His death was ruled suicide. No note, no warning, no signs, just another number on the wall. Henry didn't tell anyone what he'd heard. This time, he kept the secret, burying it beneath paperwork and protocol. But when he passed that corridor, when his boots echoed against concrete floor, he started counting the days until retirement. He couldn't explain it. He didn't want to, but the next whisper came sooner than expected. Jenkins. The whisper carried the same cadence as before. Soft, urgent, desperate. Henry ran down the corridor this time, banging on the bricks that sealed off Cell 7 like a man trying to wake the dead. Who's there? He shouted, but again, only silence answered. Officer Jenkins was one of the younger guards. Fresh-faced, barely 25. He always joked about the old prison myths, how the walls remembered things, how the shadows move on their own. Henry had warned him not to make light of the place. That night, Jenkins never clocked out. They found his patrol jacket and badge in the guard booth, but never located the man himself. A prison-wide lockdown ensued. Drones, bloodhounds, helicopters, not a single trace. It didn't matter how many guards were assigned to night shift after that. It didn't matter that the sealed hallway was now under 24-hour surveillance. The whispers continued. Each one brought a name. Each one came true. Sometimes it was a suicide. Sometimes an accident. Sometimes they just vanished. Warden Mendez finally started taking Henry seriously, but it was already too late. Henry had started keeping a list, writing down the names whispered from Cell 7, logging the times and outcomes. It was meticulous, obsessive, enough to make his fellow officers raise an eyebrow when he started locking himself in a file room on his breaks, cross-referencing inmate files, death records, blueprints. But Henry had noticed something no one else had. The voice never repeated names. It never skipped nights. It was as consistent as the moonrise and just as cold. Eventually, Henry broke protocol. He brought in a portable recorder, hid it inside his vest pocket. If no one believed him, maybe the tape would. On the night of July 9th, he heard the voice clearer than ever before. Warren. The name echoed through his chest like thunder. Henry gasped and stumbled back. Warren wasn't an inmate. Warren was his middle name. He dropped the recorder. The rest of the shift passed in a daze. He didn't respond to calls. Didn't hear the alarms. At dawn, he sat alone in the break room, shaking. The coffee in his cup had gone cold. They found him there, pale and silent, staring at the wall. "Henry," Mendez asked gently, "you okay?" Henry blinked slowly. It said my name. Mendez sighed, rubbing his temples. "You need rest. Take a few days." Henry didn't argue. He drove home, blinds down, eyes bloodshot. He didn't sleep. Not really. He sat in his recliner and listened to the recording. There it was, a faint voice, whispering through the static. "Warren." Then, beneath it, something else. A second voice. Lower, guttural. "Justice." He played the tape again. And again, until the sun rose, until his skin crawled and he felt his heart squeezing inside his chest. He knew he couldn't go back to the prison. Not without answers. Not until he knew who or what was inside Cell 7. Because if it was calling his name, then maybe, just maybe, it was asking for more than a body count. Maybe it was asking for help. Or revenge. Henry Lawson didn't return to Bradmore Penitentiary the next night, or the night after. He called in sick and shut his phone off, but the whispers didn't care. They followed him home. The first one came around 2:17 a.m. He had drifted off in a recliner with the tape, still playing a loop on his old Walkman. The static buzzed softly, almost comforting now. But then it stopped. The room went silent, unnaturally so. No hum from the refrigerator, no wind outside, not even the ticking of the kitchen clock. And then, in the stillness, "Warren!" He snapped awake, the tape dead in his lap. But the whisper hadn't come from the headphones. It had come from behind the recliner. He turned slowly, heart pounding against his ribs, and found the room empty. The shadows seemed to shift as if disturbed, and he could swear he smelled something faint. Burned wood and old copper, the scent of fire and blood. He didn't sleep that night, or the next. By the third day, he was unraveling. He spent his hours poring through old documents he'd smuggled home in a duffel bag, prisoner transfer forms, historical layouts of the prison before renovations, even hand-scrawled notes from a retired warden he tracked down online. He was connecting dots no one else had bothered to see. Cell 7 wasn't just an isolation cell. It had once been a holding room for the wrongly accused. During the early 1960s, before the prison was regulated, there had been a string of covert executions. Men deemed too dangerous or too inconvenient to keep alive. Most of them were minorities, poor, and represented by public defenders who never had a chance. The names were buried, the paperwork falsified, but Henry had found patterns. One man stood out, Samuel Dyer, convicted of murdering a correctional officer during a cafeteria riot in 1961. Witnesses disputed the claim. Even the coroner's report didn't match the alleged time of death. But the courts were in a hurry to set an example. Samuel was dragged into cell 7 and executed by hanging within 48 hours of sentencing. He maintained his innocence until the rope tightened. No one told his family. No last meal. No appeal. Just darkness. But here's the thing. Samuel Dyer's name didn't appear in any official execution logs. Not one. It was only scribbled in pencil, half-faded, on the back of a disciplinary record buried in the archives. Henry stared at the name until his eyes blurred. Samuel Dyer, he said aloud. The walls creaked. That night, Henry returned to Bradmore. He wasn't scheduled. He didn't even wear his uniform. He waited until the shift changed, slipped into the rear loading dock, and made his way to the sealed wing. The hallway buzzed with dim lighting, one fixture flickering just above cell 7. Henry stood before the bricked-up door, breathing shallowly. The air felt colder here, heavier, almost like it was watching. He pressed the recorder against the wall and hit play on the Walkman, looping the whisper. Warren, Justice. Then he whispered back, Samuel Dyer, I know who you are. The lights above him surged. The recorder sparked in his hand and died. For a brief second, the wall ahead of him seemed to ripple, as if it wasn't made of brick, but water. He staggered back, and in that flickering light, he saw it. A silhouette, a man behind the bricks, bound at the wrists, head hanging low. The wall returned to normal. He blinked. It was gone. Henry left in a daze. The recorder fried, his breath misting in the hallway as if winter had crept indoors. That night, the whisper didn't come, nor the night after, but the prison changed. Inmates started acting strangely, screaming without warning, staring into corners for hours. One man, inmate Marshall, carved the word sorry into his chest with a plastic fork. Staff began quitting. Others reported strange dreams. A few even claimed they'd seen someone walk in the condemned wing, someone in shackles. Henry watched it all from the outside. He wanted to stay away. He wanted to pretend it wasn't his problem anymore. But on August 3rd, he got a call. Warden Mendez had suffered a stroke in his office. The paramedics found him mumbling one word, over and over again. Cell 7. Henry returned the next morning. The acting warden, a woman named Carver, greeted him with a folder and a warning. You were right, she said. We don't know what it is, but it's real. Inside the folder were death reports. 7 suicides in 1 month, 2 vanishings, 1 unexplained fatal heart attack in solitary. Every single incident had one thing in common. The guard on shift had been hearing whispers, and now they were hearing something else too. Children crying. Henry felt it in his gut, a deep knowing. Cell 7 wasn't haunted by just one soul. It had become a magnet, a prison inside the prison, a place where time bent and justice screamed into the void. He had to go back one last time. That night, Henry prepared himself. He wore the old uniform, took the Walkman, a small pry bar, and one more thing, a printed photo of Samuel Dyer, the only surviving image he could find from an archived news clipping. At midnight, he stood once more before the sealed bricks, and this time he started tearing them down. Every brick he pulled felt like lifting a weight off his chest. The air around him thickened, each breath harder than the last. The prison remained dead silent, as if it were holding its breath. When he pulled the last brick free, the flashlight flickered wildly. The cell was still there, untouched, preserved in rot and rust. Chains hung from the ceiling. A small metal cot sat in the corner. Scratches lined the walls, tallies, perhaps, or words long lost time. But there, in the center of the room, stood the figure. Samuel. He looked exactly like the silhouette, tall, thin, in a torn uniform issued in the 60s. A noose hung loosely around his neck. His eyes were closed, but tears ran down his cheeks. He spoke without moving his lips. "You heard me." Henry dropped to his knees. "I did. I want peace." Henry nodded, tears building in his eyes. "I know. I'll tell them everything. I'll make them remember you." Samuel's head tilted. "Not me?" He pointed. To them. The room darkened, shadows bleeding from the walls. Behind Samuel, dozens of faces appeared. Men, boys, some disfigured, others wearing prison numbers on their faded uniforms, all with hollow eyes and open mouths, whispering. Names. Names of the forgotten. Names Henry had never heard, but felt branded into his brain like burning coals. The voices rose, and Samuel spoke one last time. "If you walk away now, they'll never stop." Another name, another death, another whisper. "You've heard them, but now they've heard you." Henry stepped forward, shaking, holding out the photograph. "This is all I have of you. The truth is buried, but maybe I can make them dig." The figure faded. The room collapsed into silence. When Henry turned to leave, the doorway had vanished. Only darkness remained. And then he woke up on the floor of his home, still in uniform. No dirt under his nails. No bricks. No recorder. But something had changed. The tape in the Walkman had been replaced. No more whispering names. Just one voice. His own. Repeating a sentence over and over. "They won't stop until we remember." Henry didn't know how many days passed after he woke up on his floor. Time seemed thinner, like something had been peeled back and never quite sealed again. He walked through his house without purpose, staring at things as if they belonged to someone else. Food had no taste. Sleep no meaning. The Walkman never left his side. Each night, he played the new tape. Each night, his own voice greeted him. But it wasn't a recording of anything he remembered saying. "They won't stop until we remember." Then silence. Then names. Dozens of names. Not whispered anymore. Spoken clearly, firmly, like a roll call for the dead. And with every name, he saw a face in his dreams. Some he recognized from old files. Others felt like strangers, yet familiar in that unsettling way dreams sometimes make strangers feel like family. And the worst part? They never repeated. Every night, new names. He knew what that meant. Cell 7 hadn't stopped. The dead were still calling. He called Warden Carver a week later, voice shaking, asking for one thing. "Let me back in." She didn't ask why. She just told him the key card would be waiting at the front desk. Bradmore had changed. Not physically, at least not on the surface. But the moment he stepped inside, he felt it. Guards walked slower. Inmates stared longer. The air buzzed like static waiting to erupt into a scream. Even the new recruits avoided the condemned wing now. They called it the Hollow. He made his way there alone. The bricks were back. Somehow, impossibly, someone had resealed the entrance to Cell 7. But this time, they weren't concrete blocks or mortar. They were bodies. 7 of them, stacked like barricades against the cell door. Not literal corpses. More like imprints, burned into the walls like shadows after a nuclear blast. Arms outstretched, mouths open, eyes hollow. Henry didn't touch them. He didn't have to. The wall opened for him. No noise, no flash of light. Just a slow groan like the building was exhaling after holding its breath for 60 years. Inside, the cell was brighter now. Candles lined the walls, flickering without flame. A small table had appeared in the corner, covered in papers. Old court transcripts, death certificates, torn diary pages. In the center sat a tape recorder. Not his Walkman. A reel-to-reel machine ancient, humming softly, and beside it, a chair. Samuel Dyer sat there, alive in a way Henry couldn't comprehend. His face still bore the weight of injustice, but his eyes were calm now. He gestured toward the chair opposite him. Henry sat. Neither spoke for a long while. Then Samuel began to unwind the tape. The machine crackled, and a voice played. Not Henry's, not Samuel's. A boy. I didn't do it. I didn't kill her. I was just trying to protect my sister. Another voice followed, angrier, rougher. He's lying. I saw him with a knife. Then a third, calm, judicial, final. Case closed. Execution authorized. Cell 7. Henry's heart stuttered. Samuel stopped the tape and looked at him. They were wrong. You know that now. Henry nodded. All of them. Samuel looked up. Enough. The shadows behind him shifted again. Not dozens this time. Hundreds. Faces blending in and out of the candlelight. All staring silently at Henry. What do you want me to do? Samuel stood, the chain around his neck falling silently to the floor like it had waited decades for this moment. Tell them. I've tried. Tell them louder. The cell pulsed. The floor beneath him cracked, revealing layer after layer of rusted chains, blood-stained concrete, and memories that refuse to die. You can't just whisper justice anymore, Samuel said. You have to scream it, until someone listens. Henry stood, too, and if they don't, Samuel stepped back, dissolving into the dark. Then you'll come back. Henry woke up in the prison infirmary. No one knew how he'd gotten there. His hands were clean, his clothes unstained, but tucked into his pocket was a single cassette labeled Cell 7 Master Copy. He spent the next year turning that tape into something more. He digitized the voices, cross-referenced the names with any shred of record he could find. Obituaries, court listings, prison logs. And then he did the unthinkable. He uploaded it. No flashy titles, no explanations, just voices from Cell 7. Within a week, it went viral. Forums exploded. Conspiracy theorists, paranormal investigators, retired guards, they all weighed in. A few claimed they'd heard the voices too. Others posted cryptic references to Cell 7 in other prisons across the country. Some said they dreamed of a narrow cell with a broken cot and a flickering candle. One night, Henry got an email from a journalist in New York. I listened to the tape, she wrote. My grandfather was one of the names. I always thought he disappeared. Then another. My uncle worked at Bradmore. He left after someone whispered his name. He took his own life a week later. Then one more. Are there more tapes? Henry didn't answer. He didn't have to. The night after he uploaded the audio, he went to sleep and dreamed of the cell again. It was empty this time. No shadows. No whispers. Just the tape recorder. And on the floor, a mirror. Cracked. Dusty. But in it he saw himself. Older. Worn. But still holding the Walkman. Still listening. The reflection spoke before he could. They won't stop until we remember. Henry doesn't work at Bradmore anymore. He travels now. Small towns. Forgotten courthouses. Abandoned jails with records rotting in boxes. He finds the names. He finds the stories. He uploads new tapes every month. No intro. No outro. Just voices. And now, others are listening too. One night, Henry walked into a diner in a town just outside El Paso. The waitress stared at him as he took a booth by the window. You're him, aren't you? He didn't answer. She placed a cup of coffee in front of him, hands trembling. My brother, he was in Cell 7. We never knew what happened. Until your tape. Henry looked up. I'm sorry. No, she said. I'm not. He's finally at peace now. Then she leaned closer. But there's another name, someone who hasn't come through yet. Henry raised an eyebrow. Who? She paused. You. He blinked, and in the window's reflection he saw the noose, not around his neck, but waiting behind him, just in case he ever stopped listening. And so, the whispers from Cell 7 fade, but only for tonight. If you're still awake, remember, some doors were sealed for a reason, and some voices were never meant to be heard again. Thank you for journeying through another dark tale with Mr. DarXnights. If these shadows stirred something inside you, subscribe and leave the light off. Until next time, sleep well.